What's up, guys? Today I'm going to tell you the story of this buck that I have 5 years worth of sheds off, and there's some insane stuff that happened along the years with how he grew and me following him. And so I'm going to jump into the story and tell you the story of the wire buck. All right, first of all, I'd like to talk about the first time I ever got to encounter this buck that I come to call the wire buck and spend 6 years chasing. The first time I ever saw him actually was in my driveway. This is a city deer. I don't live in the city, I live out in the country, but these deer live in and out of the houses. And the first year I ever saw him, I'll put a picture up right here. He was a nice buck, but he was nothing crazy, especially because he was with a nicer buck. And so that one kind of sparked my interest a little more. And that would have been velvet season, so that would have been like maybe August or July. And then I didn't actually see that buck again until I believe it was January or February. I took a video of him, and if I can find that video, I'll put it right here, of him walking away with antler on it, with still, once again, two bigger deer. So he wasn't really the focus, but he did have wire, which was absolutely awesome. So I ended up not really paying attention to him that much, if I'm being honest with you guys. And then about 2 weeks go by, and I'm kind of keeping track on him, and he's really not living far from my house. I had noticed that he dropped. I went over to the neighbor whose property he had, who I had assumed he dropped on, talked to him, and he gave me the go-ahead to go ahead and walk around wherever I felt like it. Knowing that he had wire tangled in his antlers, I assumed this would be easy to find both sides because I assumed they'd be connected. Anyway, after a quick search, I determined I could not find them, and I was pretty much giving up at that point, nor was I as committed back then. Fast forward 4 days from then, I was just coming home from the Salt Lake Hunting Expo, the first time I'd ever gone, and I looked over on the property of that guy's, pretty much as we're pulling home, I looked over on that guy's property and saw the one side sitting on his picnic table on the bench part, so kind of off to the side. And I'm thinking, no way, he found it. I got pretty excited. We got home and I ran down there. I didn't even go up to the antler. I walked up to the guy and I said, so you found the antler? And he's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. He's kind of confused because he didn't really care too much about the antlers. And I was like, well, what's the one sitting on your picnic table? So basically he had no clue this was laying there, and we'd come to find out that the buck had actually dropped this antler right here on the corner of his picnic table. I assumed the wire was just really getting to him. There was about a 5-foot strand that was just dangling, and I assumed he was just trying to get that thing off. So I almost think he used the picnic table and it landed on it. That's actually, I had walked through his yard like 4 or 5 times and never noticed it sitting there. Obviously it wasn't connected to the other side. It ended up being about 2 weeks later when 2 neighbors down needed my brother to bury a horse for him, and so my brother was over there doing that, and I walked to visit, and it was actually the only property that I hadn't walked looking for the other side. Not really sure why. I guess maybe I just didn't assume it would be in there. Anyway, so while my brother was right there, digging a big hole, I walked down this one strip of sagebrush, and sticking out of the snow was the other side. And at the time, that was by far my biggest deer set, and I absolutely lost my mind, freaked out, and so I was able to get the first deer off of this buck. Obviously, at this point, you can probably tell where he got his name. I tried to name him something a little cooler, and the wire buck was really only the thing that stuck and people talked about, so that's kind of what I stuck with over the years. But yeah, this is the wire buck. This is the first year I got a set off of him, assuming he's 3.5 or 4.5 right here. He's about 155-inch deer. Super pretty 4-point. I mean, a really cool deer, but yeah, he's about 155 this year. Fast forward to the next year, velvet season comes around, and I wanted to find him again because it was a buck that I knew lived here, so I should be able to find him, see what he looked like. What blew my mind, I finally found him, and I'll insert a picture. As you could tell, actually absolutely went crazy, and at first I had no clue what happened to this buck. Why did he look like that on one side and he was just typical on the other? I had no clue what had happened. I decided to keep track of him as best I could throughout that year. Come December, he actually walked through my yard, and I found out that he had broken all of that right side off, all but 2 points. Here's a picture of that. So I was pretty heartbroken that he had lost all that trash, because I was really hoping to find that shed. But he actually ended up disappearing. And this is the only year that I have sheds off of him that I didn't watch him because he disappeared on me. I had no clue where he went. He ended up moving about roughly 3 miles from my house in a direction that I usually never go look at deer. But I think it was February 19th, actually, I remember. February 19th, I was walking my dog. I had a little wiener dog at the time. We were walking through a sagebrush strip that same 3 miles away. It was just one that I had access to walk, so I decided why not, you know. And I was walking through the middle of it, and I was able to find, this would have been 2019, I was able to find his typical side, which actually blew me away because I had no clue where he had been for the last 3 months. So that was by far the luckiest antler I had off of him. I didn't know how long he'd been laying on the ground. I didn't know where he was. I didn't see him. So 2019 was the only year that I really didn't pay attention to him and still was able to manage to find a shed off of him. So I was super thankful to have that antler. And that made a set and a single. So after finding this single, I started door knocking so I could get permission to walk all the properties around trying to find the other side. And one of the most crazy coincidences I think ever, I knocked on a door. His sister answered, and we got to talking a little bit about, you know, exactly what I was doing. Well, come to find out that her brother had actually shot and hit this buck back in August of 2018, so this year, and that's why he grew weird. Where he shot him was outside of city limits and was legal, but I ended up figuring out why he actually grew weird the one year is because, yeah, he was shot through the knees, and to this day, which I'm sure you'll see footage of some here, I started filming him more when I was watching him more, but you can tell his knees, they're super messed up. Very unfortunate, but he's made it a long time. So that's the story of why his antler on this side grew super weird. But I thought that was way cool to figure that out. All right, fast forward to the next velvet season. I actually messed up on the dates on those. I picked up the set in 2019 and I picked up the single in 2020. So this would be still 2020, like August. I find him again, and he's back to a typical. Here's a picture of him. Just a beautiful deer. He looked super long, and I was super eager to attempt to try and find his sheds again. After finding the set and lucking onto the single, I was not going to let him slip out this year because I wanted to find 3 sets of antlers off of him, or 3 years off of him, which would be crazy. I don't think very many people have done that with mule deer. So fast forward to, let's see here, February. I started watching him every day. I found out where he was wintering, which was not close to anywhere near where he dropped that set or that single. And once again, still, you know, mixed in with private, so I had to be cautious on where I was parking and where I was watching. And I think at this point, this has been the longest time I'd ever watched a deer. I was watching him. I'd get up every morning at sunrise and go check on him, and then I'd come home and go check on him in the evenings. And this was just a buck that I really, really wanted. And in the meantime, actually, it's crazy how many friends that I've met and still know just because of this deer, of me door knocking, talking to people, asking for permission to watch him, sit there, park there. So that's pretty cool in a whole. But I ended up watching him for, I think it was midway through the 3rd week I was watching him. I woke up one morning, drove the route that I did every morning to find him. Usually it didn't take me long. And I finally found him, and he was missing one antler, and I kind of freaked out and redrove that route. And off of one of the good friends that I had made, right on the shoulder of the main road right there, just off in his property, I found this side. So his left, once again, the side that I had already had 2 years off. Absolutely lost it at this point. I'm like, no way. So I went, found him again, bedded him down. This is actually probably the coolest story out of everything that you guys are going to hear about this buck is the next shed that I found. So he actually crossed the main road, bedded in some thick sage. I bedded him down, went back, showed this antler off to everybody because everybody knew I had been watching him, and I couldn't hold my excitement any longer, and I couldn't keep my eyes off that deer. So I drove back over there about 2 hours after bedding him down, and he was gone. My heart kind of sank, actually. I was really discouraged. I was like, man, why did he get up and leave in just 2 hours? Should have never left him in the first place. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I walked down to where he was bedded, it was some lower sage, so I was a little surprised. Maybe I was just so hyper focused on where he was and not where he could be. But he ended up getting up from like 2 bushes over, and he was just on the back side of it, and I couldn't see him. He jumped up, and as he came up, this antler came off, and I actually got to watch it. And he walked out to about 50 yards, kind of looked back and stared at me, and I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. These deer are not really wild, I would say. This would be a lot different if this was a completely wild deer, but these deer, they're used to seeing people. They walk through yards all the time, so for me to walk down there and spook him up was no issue to him. He only went about, like I said, 50 yards, stopped and looked at me. I walked over and picked this one up, fresh as could be, and there we had it, 2021 set. This is his best set. This year, I believe he was 75 on this side and 77 on this side, so what's that, almost a 170 class buck, or really close to it. So just an awesome deer. Depending on the width, I think he'd be 170, but just a really, really pretty deer, and super long this year. Okay, fast forward to 2020, I guess it'd still be August of 2021. He looked about the same as he did last year. Once again, here's a picture. Just a really nice looking 4-point. He ended up losing that little point that he had started in the back the year before. Just a really, really pretty deer. And once again, I felt like every year I just had to be more committed to finding him, just so that I could continue to have this story and these years off of him. I ended up making a mistake this year and took a guess about when he was going to shed. And every year he had shed just a touch later than he did the year before. And so I made a guess of when he was going to shed, and I actually had a trip planned, what I thought was plenty of time before, and I went down to Arizona and shed on it with my buddy Cole. And I watched him all the way up until the day I left. And the day I got back, I drove over there as quick as possible to make sure, and he was gone. He had shed. Well, he wasn't gone. He had shed, and I had no idea. I looked everywhere, and 2022 was the only year. The spring of 22 was the only year I did not pick him up. I was a little heartbroken, but what can you do? It happened. The only thing I could do from there was try and get him the year after, right? Well, that's exactly what I tried to do. The next year, he ended up throwing off a sweet inline, and this was probably my favorite year as far as looks go of what he looked like. I absolutely loved his look from the year of 22 through spring of 23. And same thing, I actually had to prioritize a different deer, which was Marty, which is this buck right here. I had to prioritize this buck because I found him, and that buck ended up officially going 216, so you can't blame me there. That was 100% free-range wild deer. So spring of 2023, I prioritized him. He ended up shedding early. I was able to pick him up. Like I said, he went 216. That was just an awesome story. I spent 3.5 weeks straight staring at that deer, so that was pretty cool. But right after Marty dropped, I went straight back to looking for the wire buck. I believe I was in it about a week and a half. This buck that was hanging out with him actually popped. That's a set of sheds. He's also huge, way bigger than the wire buck. But I had already had so much history with the wire buck, he was really the one I wanted the most. But I did pick up that set the same year, 2023. So one morning I drove out there to check on him. I was glassing all over the property I had permission to, and I ended up dropping my binos, slipping, and they went way low, and I miraculously glassed up the typical side off of the wire buck from spring of 23, almost on the shoulder of a highway. As excited as I was, my heart kind of sank because I had a pretty good feeling that he had left that property and gone somewhere else. Well, it took me till 2 p.m. that afternoon. I spent all day looking for him, and it took me till 2 p.m. to find him, and he had gone almost 3.5 miles, and he was missing them both. So, as you can imagine, I started door knocking and walking and searching as best I could. I was never able to turn up his inline side from that year, but luckily, when I couldn't match him up, I always had the left side. So I've got the left side for 4 years at this point. other than the year that I didn't find any. But yeah, that concludes spring of 2023. After that, I usually see him every velvet season. And I believe this was the first year that I did not see him this last 2023 season. I did not see him in velvet. I did not see him hardhorn. I did not see hide nor hair of him. I actually thought he died because, he's getting pretty old at this point, especially to live where he can get hit by a car, he can get ran by dogs. And they still do get killed, even though most of the time it's not legal. After pretty much being confident that he was dead at this point, I was driving around out where he usually sheds, and it was December, and I noticed a buck out in the field, and his legs were all out-toed, just like the wire buck, and I'm like, hold on. Pulled up my binos. Sure enough, 100% was him. I got pretty excited because I thought for sure he wasn't alive anymore, and knew that I had a shot at finding another set of sheds off him, or at least one or two. That was the goal. Fast forward, this year, spring of 24, was the year I believe I spent the most time watching him. I watched him every morning, every night. I believe I watched him from like February 11th almost, other than days that I was out of town. But I watched him from February 11th through March 19th. So I watched him for almost 2 months, which is crazy. So after watching him for almost 2 months, he decided to pop this one in his bed, and then knowing that he didn't shed long after, I kept super close eye on him. I watched him every second I got, and he actually didn't drop this side until almost 3 days later, which is crazy because he had always dropped in the same day from what I had known. But so that makes his 2024 set. This is the coolest set I think I have off of him. He's got the inline and the kicker off the back, so he is 5x5. Just a super cool deer this year. I was super thankful to be able to pick up 5 years of antlers off of this deer, which is crazy. I can't imagine many people have done that with mule deer, and just such a cool story all the way through at this point. I know he's getting old now. If he was 3.5 the first year I picked him up, he'd be 9.5 now. And if he was 4.5, then he's 10.5 right now. So either way, he's a very old deer. And I'm praying that he makes it one more year, because another set of sheds would be absolutely insane. But for now, 5 years off of him, and he's a dang cool deer for sure. Well, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed that story time. There's so many hours that have gone into this deer, and he's just a special deer to me. I hope you guys really enjoyed the story. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.